All right, hey VC, how you doing? I'm Jamie. Welcome back with another video. This time it's a fairly recent haul. Some albums I haven't really had a chance to show you that are just kind of it's a back catalog, if you will, or also some quarantine time pickups, which is interesting. I'm starting to see that title a lot in the vinyl community. Albums I picked up during quarantine time, that sort of thing. I guess no contact delivery and pickup sort of thing. But so these albums weren't all purchased at one particular time over a period of time. Again, just some albums I haven't had a chance to show you. So yeah, let's get right to it. Okay, we've got Guns N' Roses, their classic album, Appetite for Destruction from 1987 on the Geffen label. Welcome to the Jungle, Sweet Child of Mine, also Paradise City, rocking from start to finish. I must admit, I am enjoying the Twitter war or Twitter battle between Axl Rose and Steve Mnuchin these days. It's entertaining to say the least. On the Geffen label, and what's interesting to note, instead of side A or side B, it's side G and side R. Guns N' Roses. So they're classic from 1987. Okay, we have a 10-inch for you on this one. This is King Crimson and the song Cat Food, which was released as a single for a band really not noted for their singles. A longer version of Cat Food would show up on In the Wake of Poseidon. And so this is the 50th anniversary reissue with a couple of different mixes. Very nice overall. Nice sleeve that's included. The label is a little on the plain side, but then there's a nice picture of the band on the other side. So King Crimson, Cat Food anniversary release. Got some blues for you. How about Albert King, The Big Blues, Vivid Sound from 1962. This is on Wax Time. This is a reissue. Certainly, if the blues guys can't get enough Albert King, a couple of bonus tracks on this one as well. You know, just wonderful to listen to. 180 gram vinyl on Wax Time. And nice label for sure. Okay, Albert King. Something completely different. How about Pete Brown and his Battered Ornaments? And the album is called A Meal You Can Shake Hands With in the Dark. And why not? This is a double album from 1969. Pete Brown was the lyricist for the band Cream, working with Jack Bruce and Eric Clapton. Then Cream would break up. Pete Brown and his Battered Ornaments. Pete Brown only, as far as I understand, appears on this album. They were recording a second album where Pete was either kicked out of the band or quit the band. They then, before the release, wiped out his vocals and replaced his vocals. Now, when you say vocals, he's definitely a lyricist, so he's not really a singer. So there's some spoken word stuff on here as well. If you're into Frank Zappa, or Captain Beefheart, that sort of thing, I think you would like this. It's quirky, it's wild, it's 1969, it's proggy, jazzy, definitely well worth checking out. Pete Brown and his Battered Ornaments. And this is a reissue, nice glossy finish on the album cover. And again, just quirky and fun overall. And it might have been originally a Harvest label release, but this is the only release that I've seen where they included two copies of the catalog for this particular label for Pure Pleasure Records, and they included two copies of the same. One in each part of the album. So well worth checking out. Pete Brown and his Battered Ornaments. Okay, something a little different. How about Nana Muscuri and the Songs of the British Isles? And why not? I was given this album. I'm not a huge Nana Muscuri fan. She sings traditional British folk songs in this one. I like her treatment of He Moved Through the Fair, which starts off this album. It's got a really nice sound to it. The rest of it's okay. Danny Boy, songs like that. But hey, I love the cover. I love the detail here, and then just how that looks like a different style of drawing from the rest of it so completely. But there you go, Nana Muscuri, and this is on the Philips label. Okay. finally have a copy of Miles Davis Sketches of Spain. This is not the original album cover. Of course, that is the original album cover. This is on wax time, but this is on colored vinyl. This amazing collaboration, arranged and conducted by Gil Evans with Miles Davis. Absolutely wonderful. Pretty straightforward label, but the vinyl is cool in terms of the yellow vinyl. Though such a monumental album. So wonderful, with a bonus track as well. Okay. How about Louis Armstrong meets Oscar Peterson? And yeah, so this came out in 1957. This is just a nice jazzy, breezy kind of album, pretty easygoing, if you will. Certainly, Oscar Peterson can be, quite certainly at this point of his career was playing, quite fast and quite complex. But with Louis Armstrong, it's a nice, easygoing album. I don't believe there's any bonus tracks in this one, but a few long songs. Like the song "How Long Has This Been Going On?" clocks in at 5 minutes 58 seconds. The track "You Go to My Head" clocks in at 6 minutes and 27 seconds. But a great album overall, and nice to see that this is the original cover. But really enjoyed this one. Again, pretty straightforward labeling, but worth checking out. Louis Armstrong meets Oscar Peterson, of course. Canada's Oscar Peterson. Can't get enough John Coltrane. Here's a late 50s release, John Coltrane Black Pearls. And a bonus track on here as well. And you can't get enough John Coltrane for sure. Okay, how about the Beatles, Rubber Soul? This is a pretty worn copy of this particular album. Such a great album from the Beatles. Fair bit of water damage up here. Of course, we know and love the tracks, but this is a mono copy of Rubber Soul, so I was pretty thrilled about that. Again, it's a little worn. It's hardly in mint condition, shall we say, but it's on the Rainbow label. But yes, it is a mono copy of it. So just to get a mono copy of either Rubber Soul or Revolver is more than welcome. And certainly more than welcome is Joni Mitchell, and this is her tribute to jazz legend Charlie Mingus. My wife, I guess, not a fan. I played this the other day, and she said, "Boy, that music will put you to sleep." I beg to differ, but featuring Joni's wonderful artwork through and a lovely tribute, jazzy tribute to Charles Mingus. And at last, I have a copy of Etta James At Last, this wonderful album of Etta James, originally on the Chess label from 1960. I believe her debut album with Chess. This features the orchestration and of Riley Hampton, and this really has a nice, has a standards kind of jazz feel to it with the orchestration, but her bluesy voice just comes through wonderfully loud and clear. This has 4 bonus tracks, including 7 Day Fool, which is great. Canadian artist Julie Black, in years past, had done a really nice cover of that song. But this is such a wonderful album. And it's interesting you forget that At Last, like this came out in 1960, and that song now has been so associated with Etta James. But on the BBC, they had VE 75th anniversary celebrations where they did some songs from the past, including At Last. I can't remember who the singer that they had sing the song At Last, but you forget that that song actually first came out in like 1941, 1942 as a Glenn Miller song. But Etta James At Last, what a wonderful album. Wonderful album. Okay, some early REO Speedwagon's second album, and this features Kevin Cronin, who would come and go with the band in the early days. I don't think he's on the first album, but he's on the second album and then left, but then of course came back, and he's of course the noted vocalist of the band. But certainly early REO is rockin' stuff. You can definitely put on some early REO Speedwagon, if you're playing things like Marshall Tucker Band or maybe Atlanta Rhythm Section. If you put on an REO, like early REO, I don't think anyone would blink. I mean, now REO noted for their ballads, and they have quite such a much more of a pop sound. But in their early days, they were rocking pretty good. And then I picked up a REO Speedwagon. This is Lost in a Dream. I think this is the third or fourth album. This is when Kevin had left the band, but then would come back. So they have a different vocalist on this one. And yeah, this is really enjoyable album. And this one contains the original insert. Again, for early REO, they were a pretty good rockin' band in the early days for sure. And again on the Epic label. Okay, how about a little bit of Canadian content for you? We've got Frozen Ghost, A Nice Place to Visit. This came out in 1988. This is good, pop radio-friendly rock, featuring Arnold Lenny, who was with the band Sheriff. Sheriff, a Canadian band, had the big hit When I'm With You. When that song was a big hit in the States, that band had already broken up, and then Arnold Lenny went on to form Frozen Ghost. Arnold Lenny doesn't sing lead vocals on that Sheriff song, but he is the vocalist with this band. Some of the big hits were Dream Come True, Pauper in Paradise, Round and Round. Again, nice radio-friendly pop. And on the WIA label. Okay. How about Elvis Costello, Taking Liberties? This is a 1980 release on Columbia, and I think this is when he then switched labels, if I'm not mistaken. So this had featured a fair chunk of previously unreleased stuff or some slightly different mixes of stuff. And it's interesting to listen to it. It doesn't sound like filler or anything like that. It sounds like it's an album that was kind of, shall we say, meant to be. A lot of tracks on here, but having said that, Elvis Costello songs in the early days were not very long, almost like the Ramones, very, very short songs. But no, this is a good album overall from the early days. And I do like the label on here that they've made it look like an old label. It says Columbia on that side and then Costello on this side. Kind of cool. That's fun. Talk about classic albums. Muddy Waters, live in Newport, 1960. This is not the original album cover from Chess. This, again, is a European reissue, but features that, this is the record. It features those wonderful performances from when he took Newport by storm, 1960. What a band, too. But, I got my mojo working, Tiger in Your Tank. And unfortunately, not the original album cover, but Muddy Waters at Newport, 1960. Okay, some early Allman Brothers Band. In fact, their first two albums. This is a double album called Beginnings, but this is a sort of a budget reissue of their first two albums, Allman Brothers Band and Idle Wild South. What's interesting for this, though, is that they had a different producer initially for their first album than Tom Dowd, and great Tom Dowd would take over the producing engineering. And he actually remixed the first album for this release. So if you do have Allman Brothers as a single album, it's a different mix on here. But it's a nice, budget, nice ringwear on the cover and the back. But on the classic Atco label. Okay, and speaking of early albums, managed to finally nail down a copy of Kiss the Originals. I had this years ago as one of those albums that kind of disappeared over time, but this is, of course, their first three albums, Kiss, Hotter Than Hell, and Dressed to Kill. This is the Canadian pressing on Quality Records. This has everything except the Kiss Army patch is not included in this one, but it does have the wallet-sized cards here, if you will. And whoever owned this previously was making some sort of checklist. But I love how they're referred to on this. Like Gene Simmons is referred to the vampire, Peter Criss the cat, Paul Stanley the love object, and Space Ace Frehley is the interterrestrial being. But very, very nice to see the cards included, and it does include also the booklet that originally came with it. You've likely seen this booklet many times. I won't go into any detail with it. It's not a very thick booklet, but nice LP size. And then this is a Quality Records released through Casablanca. So this is the version where it's just a blue. This is the first album, so it's blue, yellow, and red. But I've seen some different labels or different configurations with the labels. But very cool to have Kiss the Originals, and then the very straightforward gatefold there. Okay. The Police, Synchronicity. We've seen this album many times, but this is at least an original copy. Still in the shrink with the price $5.99 at A&A Records, and contains the original hype sticker that says pressed on KC 600 audiophile vinyl, which is kind of cool. And still in the shrink, and then still with the, it opens up on the top. And their last studio album. And, oops, and the great label too. Police and Synchronicity. Still a great album. A little bit more blues for you. How about some Sonny Terry? We're Robbing the Grave. This is a collection of new songs with Sonny Terry accompanied by piano and guitar. I just love the sort of early blues acoustic sounds. Oops, sorry about the camera there. The early blues acoustic sounds of Sonny Terry. And this is on the Blue Labor label. Say that 5 times fast. Blue Labor label. Sonny Terry. And great packaging. Alice Cooper. I've always enjoyed Alice Cooper in terms of the packaging of their albums. The music is great, but I mean, the packaging has always been so creative. And boy, this one, Alice Cooper, Muscle of Love. Alice Cooper's last album with the Alice Cooper Group. And this is still in the packaging, but it's quite water damaged, unfortunately, here on the back. But very creative there. And it does include the original inner sleeve. Or the boys' night out turns very badly. So much so that then they're peeling potatoes. But yeah, lots of fun packaging for this group. And then on the Warner Brothers Palm Tree label. But yeah, with Alice Cooper, always such fun packaging and creative packaging to this day. How about Jean Evangelis? It's Friends of Mr. Cairo. Of course, now you won't be able to get that song out of your head now that we've mentioned it. Man, this is a very enjoyable album. Forgot how enjoyable this album actually is to listen to. I don't know. You tend to hear a song so much that you kind of try to put it out of your head, but overall, it's good. I mean, it's Vangelis, it's John Anderson, and yeah, it works. It totally works. Okay, Dan Hartman, I Can Dream About You. Dan Hartman, I love the song I Can Dream About You. That is just a great radio hit. Of course, we forget often that Dan Hartman was with the Edgar Winter Group. But yeah, not a bad album, pretty pop-friendly. But the song I Can Dream About You, what a great radio-friendly hit. And speaking of radio-friendly, on this one, Aretha Franklin, Who's Zoomin' Who? This features Clarence Clemons on Freeway of Love. Forgot he was on that track, but Who's Zoomin' Who? Who's Zoomin' Who? Also a great one. And Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves, duet with the Eurythmics, or Annie Lennox of the Eurythmics. This really putting Aretha at least back on the charts at that time. Gosh, when was this? 1985 on Arista. Distributor Ned there. But yeah, pretty 80s produced, but it's Aretha, so it's always wonderful. Okay, John Coltrane plays the blues. Can't get enough John Coltrane. This is again on Jazz Classics, and yeah, original album cover at least for this one, as I recall. And this is on Wax Time. Oops. And does this? Yes, this has a bonus track as well. Alternate take from 1960. John Coltrane plays the blues. And again, as we've talked about with some of these reissues, the labeling, I'm just surprised how plain some of the labeling can be. There you go. I don't know if I've shown that one before. If I have, I apologize. But one I haven't shown is Jackson Browne. This is Jackson Browne for Every Man, one of his early albums. And this is the original sort of cutout photo here. A cutout cover, and then it pops up like that. Very cool. But I cannot believe how many guest artists are on this one. and just kicks off with his rendition of the song "Take It Easy." Of course, that was the big Eagles hit that Jackson Browne had co-written. But the people that appear on this album is unbelievable. You got David Lindley appearing on here, great session drummer Jim Keltner. Gosh, you've also got Glenn Frey appearing on here. Who else? Bonnie Raitt is on this album, and also I believe David Crosby, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not seeing his name offhand, but I think David Crosby's on here as well. So it's just a whole bunch of different people that are all featured on this album. Yep, David Crosby's on here as well. I'm probably missing one or two, and I think what was I reading? Somebody else is on this album, but has to appear under an alias. Piano by Rockaday Johnny was an alias for Elton John, I believe. So, like, what a guest list on this early album from 1973 for Jackson Browne. He was really already well connected at the time, and of course on the Great Asylum label. Here's a band I've been able to find kind of in the wild. Usually you get their albums for fairly cheap. Climax Blues Band. This is Sense of Direction. It's not so blues heavy. They're more kind of a rock and slash pop band. They had that song "I Love You," which was a lovely tender ballad. Overall, they're not too bad. But I usually tend to find their albums pretty cheaply in the wild, so I tend to pick them up. They're not a bad band overall, and this on Sire label. And another band that I often see in the wild, but really enjoy picking up, is albums by The Tubes. I didn't even know about this one, The Tubes' Love Bomb. And I think, and maybe with one or two exceptions, I think I have just about everything in The Tubes catalog now on vinyl. And gosh, when did this one come out? Am I guessing this is an 80s release? Or I think mid 80s, maybe 85. But yeah, The Tubes. And The Tubes that kind of, like so many bands, developed a little bit more of a pop sound, but I like this is on a Capitol Rainbow release. But yeah, The Tubes. Okay, I was able to pick this up for a fairly decent price. Led Zeppelin's 3, such a fantastic album. This is not, it's not a reissue or anything like that, but it has the nice little wheel that you can, of course, utilize. That it's got to have the wheel so you can have all the fun there. What can you say? Such a great album. A little bit of wear from the wheel there. You can see, I don't know if you can see it properly, but you can see a little bit of the impression from this through the back. And of course on the Atlantic label. This is Paul McCartney's Ram. This is not a reissue, but a later issue when he was briefly on Columbia. So this came out actually on Columbia. Such a great album, Ram. But this one on the Columbia label, so you don't see that too often anymore. Okay. Got some more Muddy for you. How about Muddy Waters? This is I Got My Brand on You, the 1956 to 1962 studio recordings. And again, this is on Wax Time. There's lots of stuff on here. Lots of great music. Again, the 180 gram. And pretty much following the color-coded labels. But wonderful, wonderful blues. A little bit more Joni Mitchell for you. Some later Joni. This is Dog Eat Dog. This is when she was on the Geffen label. I love the artwork for this. I forgot how cool, or just interesting. There's a lot going on for this album cover with the crash there, and then what's going on. Certainly for Joni Mitchell's albums, always the artwork is amazing. It's not a bad album, maybe not one of Joni's best, but not bad overall. But it's Joni Mitchell. Love Joni. Okay, and we've got some more Elvis Costello. This is the cover is quite water damaged on this one, but gosh, this is such a great album. Elvis Costello and the Attractions Get Happy, but as you can see, the album cover is quite water damaged. It's got quite a not a very good feel to the album cover. But I forgot for this album that you see side one and side two as listed there, and then you go to play it, and then the label doesn't match the cover. So then side one here is listed as the first track, "Love for Tender," for side one, and then side two, the first song is "I Can't Stand Up for Falling Down," the old Sam and Dave song, but that's what it says on the cover. And this, I know one is correct and one is not. I can't remember if the cover is correct and the labeling is wrong, but it's there you go. I can't remember which one is which. I think it must be that this is wrong, of course, because the label does match the songs that are played. So I think it was meant to be in terms of the label is correct and the cover is wrong. But yeah, kind of forgot about that because I'm putting it on. Wait a minute, side one, "I Can't Stand Up." No, that's on side two. What's going on here? So there you go. Some fun labeling issues there. But yeah, I think it's the record that's correct. And then we've got this. So happy to get a copy of The Byrds, "Turn, Turn, Turn." What a magnificent album. "Turn, Turn, Turn." He was a friend of mine. David Crosby, Roger McGuinn. Such a wonderful album. Yeah, and this is not a reissue, so it's this one's a nice copy on the Columbia 2i. Really happy to pick up that classic album. And the Beatles Story, this unusual Capitol Beatles release where it's just kind of snippets of songs, but basically it's a narrative on the Beatles story. So it has that really old kind of 60s style. These are the Beatles, and they're taking the world by storm. But in terms of the Beatles history, this one's definitely worth having. Maybe not for everyone. This one's not in the best of shape. It's got autograph of the previous owner, and you got some nice tape up on the top. But it's a curious thing, and I think this contains a live version. I can't remember which track it is, but it would be the only live snippet of a Beatles song that wouldn't appear till later with Live at the Hollywood Bowl. And at this time, they were going to release a Live at the Hollywood Bowl was the intention. Then they weren't happy with the tape, so then they Capitol went with this instead. The live album, I think, would have been a much better idea. But this has the original sleeves, the original sort of Capitol record sleeves, which is kind of cool. And then on the great rainbow label. But The Beatles Story, a narrative and musical biography of Beatlemania on 2 long play records. Kind of a curious thing. And yeah, let's see if we can squeeze a few more in. These were ones I'd picked up at a thrift store or a value village quite some time ago. Elvis Presley's Paradise Hawaiian Style. The albums are a little worn, but still play okay. A Hal Wallace production. And this one on RCA Victor. And then this one, this was on the Camden label, so another Elvis budget release. Let's Be Friends, Elvis. And this one's got a bunch of sort of leftover movie soundtrack songs. Again, kind of a budget. And this one, I think there's only like 4 tracks on side 2, 5 tracks on side 1. I think this album is like less than 25 minutes. So it's a real quick budget release. But hey, picked it up at Vinyl Village. This is RC on the blue label with Camden. And maybe we'll squeeze in 1 or 2 more. Lighthouse, 10 Greatest Hits. This is a K-Tel release, so I got this for next to nothing. It's interesting, though, that this is volume 1. There was a volume 2, but you generally see it as a double album release. But this was also released as 2 single albums. So you got side 1, side 2, featuring some of the great early Canadian band Lighthouse, One Fine Morning, Sunny Days, Take It Slow, Pretty Lady, all big radio hits in Canada. Back in the 70s, Lighthouse on K-Tel, as advertised on TV. And let's wrap it up with Bob Marley, Rastaman Vibration. Such a wonderful classic album from the great Bob Marley. And this gatefold. You know, great. What can you say about this album that hasn't already been said? And on Island Records. Okay, well, that is going to wrap it up for this one. We got through some albums for sure on this one. I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully it wasn't too long, but we'll chat again soon. So do take care. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.